Hello everyone, welcome to the Real Estate Experience, where today we're going to be getting into some tactics, tools, and strategies. So tune in because going to be dropping some heat, where the subject is what to do in 90 days to get your first multifamily deal. So we'll just jump right into it, and for myself, use this exact same process, fine-tuned it, refined it over the course of the journey on the multifamily side, but now it's to a point where just doing small tweaks at this moment. So just going to share what I've done up until this point. So firstly, what you want to do is you want to take a step back and educate yourself on multifamily. So that's one thing that you want to do. And I would say this is even before the 90 days. So myself, I love to tell people the timeline has always been great for me with jumping into anything new, whether that was single family home investing and then transition to multifamily, is giving myself a month and a half to do all the necessary education and then to just jump in. Because from my personal experiences, you can never know it all. So from there, you take as much as you can. Myself, I was on YouTube. Shout out to Grant Cardone. His earlier content was very tactical and practical information on getting into multifamily, analyzing deals, what to look for, what to avoid. I was reading books. So there was another one, Multifamily Millions by David Lindhall. That was a great book as well. And then also on biggerpockets.com, leveraging others' experiences of them posting their deal and then sharing their experience of, these are the failures that I had, these were the successes. So really just, I would say, swimming in the Kool-Aid of information to really consume myself. I was even listening to information while sleeping, interesting enough, to really get to understand. And then when a month and a half is done, that's when I just jump right into doing the marketing and actually doing the tactical work to get that first deal. So on the multifamily side is one, determining what your buying criteria is. And buying criteria is on the multifamily side, I'll just share mine, is apartments that are between 75 to 200 units that are in working class settings in Indianapolis, Indiana. Even though we've expanded to multiple markets, but I'm just showing you how niche. So that apartments, 75, 200 units that are C-class assets, so older built, 1960s to about 1975, that are in B- to C+ locations, which of course the grade of the location is subjective, but we're absolutely avoiding the war zones, and these are market rate rents, so between $600 to $900. So from there is very laser-like focus on the types of properties that we're going for. And then secondly, you want to pick your specific neighborhood or market. So those of you who may be in the West Coast or East Coast, where cash flow is just the types of deals that you're looking at, it's just not penciling out for whatever reason, then you want to be looking at markets that do fit that specific parameter. So I'm starting to see more and more individuals from West Coast, even international East Coast, that where their market is just not allowing for them to get those yields and cash flow, that they're moving to markets such as the Midwest that will allow them to get those prices and those yields that they're going for. So from there is you know what your market is that you're investing in, and there's different ways to go about doing your due diligence on the market. Myself is look at the economics, meaning that there is population growth, there's a low unemployment rate, there's diverse businesses that are headquartered there. Indianapolis, there's Simon Property Group, which is one of the largest real estate investment trusts in the world. There's Eli Lilly, which is a large pharmaceutical company. So very diverse in that. And then to allude to population growth, low unemployment, job growth. And then you even go further into the neighborhood that you're targeting, just to ensure that the that it's very diverse there with the businesses that are around there, meaning that your let's say you purchase an apartment, but all of your residents are coming from one manufacturing company that is the main supplier, then that could be a concern in the event that they shut down. So diverse in that. Schools is very critical as well, because you have to think of your resident base as well, that these families want to have good schools. So the better the schools, the better quality of tenant. And then also crime is another thing to look at as well when you're really narrowing down neighborhood. You can use sources such as Spot Crime, I believe it's .org or .com is a great source. And then you can even call your local police department, and they'll be able to disclose how much crime and different reports and activity has been in that specific neighborhood. And you can also, I highly recommend for anyone who is expanding to a market they're not familiar with, is to drive it and get a better feel. Are you comfortable getting out of the car yourself? If not, then that may not be an area you want to invest in. That's just my personal opinion on that side, but highly always recommend visiting and getting a better feel for it. Myself, when I expanded to Louisville, Kentucky with an apartment purchase that was in October of last year, that was February of this year, that I personally stayed in a couple of Airbnbs to really get a feel for the neighborhood that I was going to be purchasing apartments in. And I was going to the local stores, asking people, what do you think about this neighborhood? Would you stay? Would you leave? Is there high crime? So really getting some feedback, boots on the ground. Yeah, I went all out with that. That's just me personally. I really like to really dial deep and get in the trenches on that. So that's those first steps, which is determining your buying criteria, being zero-like focus. And this also works for the single family side as well, but we're going to be more on the multifamily side. Pick neighborhood and either or market. Market is if you're, pick both of them from that side. Market, and then narrow down neighborhood. There's always the flip side to stay as close as home as possible. I would say yes, for sure. That is always highly recommended from my personal experience. And I'm just experience sharing from my journey in this industry. And from that is, staying close to home allows you, if something doesn't go right with doing third-party management, then you can go out there and be more hands-on yourself, versus when you're in California and the property is in, let's say, Dayton, Ohio, then you're more heavily reliant on the boots on the ground. So boots on the ground is very critical if you're investing out of state. Additionally, once you have all your buying criteria, the market, and even going as low as the being even more zoned in with the neighborhood, is to jump into the driving it. So I took the driving for dollars approach on that first multifamily deal. That was the 46 units. So knew that at that time our criteria was, I would say, 40 to 75 units. This was about 2.5-3 years ago. And with that is, knew that we wanted to be on the south side, so drove the south side of Indianapolis, and then found this apartment that needed work. It needed quite a bit of work. And from there was, everything is public information. The tools, I love the internet. Also, your city has everything property related is public. So with that, pulled the property address, saw that it was owned by an LLC, and then skip trace the LLC. And what I mean is skip tracing is just searching to find who the owner is of that LLC. And there's this phenomenal source I love, which is it's spelled Google. Google is a phenomenal source when it comes to skip tracing, and you can find, luckily found the owner of that LLC, called them up directly. And at that time, this was the last apartment that he sold all the other ones. So it just happened to be luck, you can say. So when preparedness meets opportunity, of course there was plenty of deals that were looked at before that point, but at this there was a sign of motivation, because this was the last apartment that he had and he was running it into the ground. So that's where we came in and solved the problem. But that's in driving for dollars approach, which it can get time intensive, but this is something that you can leverage for those who do not have the capital to spend towards marketing. Or another source that you can use, which is very affordable, is listsource.com to pull this data. And when I use that source, it's just pulling apartments with the unit count of 75 to 200 units that were sold. I don't pull ones that were sold within the most recent 2 years and that were built within that time frame that I alluded to earlier. So avoiding the apartments that are new construction, because that's just not going to work for our numbers and not our niche at this moment. So the key thing here is having that sniper approach when targeting versus the shotgun approach. Everyone has their different ones. The sniper approach is always, I would say, worked for me when having that zero-like focus and knowing what you're going for. And that allows you to spend a little bit more in your marketing and devote more time to nurturing those relationships with those owners. But if you have multiple, a lot more properties that you're going for and you're taking the scattered approach, then that allows some to filter through and you're not able to follow up as much, which I would say the follow-up is the most crucial thing, but we'll get to that at a later point. So I mentioned determine buying criteria, picking your neighborhood, drive for dollars, looking for properties that are distressed and need work. And then if the other source that you can use is list source to pull apartments as well. It's pretty affordable. It doesn't cost as much to use that. And then from there is, since this information is public record, you can then, if some owners, especially mom and pop, have the apartments that are actually in their personal names. So when it's personal name, you can use a source such as, TruePeopleSearch.com to be able to find who that person's, to find their contact information. Hopefully their name is not as common as John Smith. That is never fun to try and skip trace that. Very common name. But if they have a unique name or a name that's not as common as John Smith, then you'll be fine with using a source such as, I like Ben Verify personally. That's a little bit paid. That is BEEN or free service is just TruePeopleSearch.com. And if it's owned in their personal name, you can just go straight to that source and find out their contact information from there. And if it's not in their personal name and it's in an LLC, then you have to do some more digging, which there's tons of sources that are out there, which is, I love Open Corporates is one. I believe it's opencorporates.com or .org. It's .com. And then there's BBB.org, BetterBusinessBureau.org. And then there's one last one that's just not coming to mind right now, but I'll possibly think of it later. If not, don't hesitate to reach out to me to ask for that additional source. But I would say Open Corporates is pretty good. And it's just typing in the LLC into the Google search bar. And then from there, you look at the directories. And then what will happen is when you click on the directory, it'll tell you who the owner is. Most likely it'll say owner, it'll say managing member, it'll say manager, and then from there you just take that information and then you can either skip trace it or most times their contact information is then and there. But there's also other sources that you can use too, which is CoStar out there. They have their own database where it's already been done for you. It's a little bit more costly, which I haven't used it. Actually I have used it, and their data, some of it's not up to date, I would say, some of it, which would just bring us back to square one. So decided to just do it all from scratch personally myself. So I'll just give you a prime example. Is I was sitting down with one of the reps in the office, and I asked, could you just pull a sample apartment so I can see what the data is? And I had them pull the apartment that I was actually in, that I am a operator on, and that the property that I was in was purchased a year ago, and my information still wasn't in there, meaning that they still had the old ownership, the management company that was associated with. So that from there was just, I might as well just, I'm gonna have to keep going through this and starting from scratch ultimately. So that was just a little test that I did, and I did not provide my own information to that rep so they could update it. They probably ended up updating it at a later point, but do not want people to be cold calling me. But yeah, so with that is the next one is skip tracing using those databases that I mentioned to you earlier. So which is Manta. Oh, Manta was what it was. Open Corporates, and then bbb.org, which is betterbusinessbureau.org. And then some of you may get a little bit squeamish on this, but it is picking up the phone and then calling. Yes, that is correct. This is a cold call, a complete stranger. It is not as big and hairy as you think it is. It's some people, of course, are not so inclined to make these calls due to maybe limiting beliefs that they have, and you're calling a complete stranger. But for my side is cold calling, it works. It does work. And with that is you just pick up the phone. I like to personally go by a script so I know what I'm saying, how I'm going to say it, and then how to overcome objections, because you will get objections. I'll tell you this now is if you're someone who does not like making cold calls, then it's just simply you either get a partner involved to where you give them maybe a cut of the deal, the profits, or you just simply pay someone on Upwork.com is a source that you can leverage. There is Fiverr.com as well, and that is Fiverr.com that you can leverage. I'm not affiliated with these platforms by any means, just throwing out some sources that you can use. And that's what it just comes down to. If you don't have the money and you cannot find someone to partner with, then you have to do it yourself. I'm giving you all the tools and everything, but it just comes down to just figuring it out and just getting in there, whether it's you doing it or finding someone to do it if you're unable to do it. And what I've found is the best times to call, or it depends on whatever time zone, of course, but between the hours of 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then after hours between 5 to 8 p.m. And from there is you just give them the simple pitch. I've always just gone straight to the point, meaning that I'll just go into a little bit of role playing. Love the role playing. Shout out to Grant Cardone on this was one of the biggest things that I was able to get away from him, along with other things. But role playing has been very crucial because, as I allude to, people throw out objections, and you have to really get through those in order to separate yourself from the others and stand over those individuals. Not stand over those individuals, but just set yourself apart and have the person on the other side see that you're a serious person. So from there is script will go like this. So it would be ring, ring, ring. This is John speaking. Hello, John, Sterling here. I wanted to personally reach out. I own Bentwood Apartments right across the street from yours and wanted to see if you consider on selling. Then from there they say no, not interested. A lot of times they're just throwing you off the phone, wanting to get you off the phone. John, I completely understand. I'm sure you get these types of calls all the time. I tell you what, give me 30 seconds. If you don't like what you hear, I'll hang up on myself. Sound fair? And then from there they say, oh, okay, go ahead. Let me ask you this. Do you have a 75 unit or above by chance? To get some back and forth, because one thing is I love to keep it short and compact, because I've had people call me and then they just go on a long-winded thing about whatever services they have and don't ask me any questions to actually qualify me if I'm the right person that would be a fit for their service, vice versa, of course. And so from there is you want to qualify the individual and say, hey, if we were to provide the right price, what would that be? So you want to be of interest to them and really get some ping pong back and forth is what I like to call it, to where you're getting them talking as well. And this goes back to them seeing you as serious, because a lot of people just go in there, the person they speak to say not interested. Okay, well, once you become interested, here's my contact information. Please give us a call. No, that you have to overcome those objections and then get through it. Role playing has helped me tremendously, which I do on a daily basis. So now we have a infrastructure to where there is a researcher that does all those things that I mentioned, the skip tracing, someone who does the cold calling, and then they set the appointment with myself once the person that they do call is considering or interested in selling, and then that's for me to come in and do the close. But it comes down to a numbers game, and I mean a lot of numbers, meaning over 100 calls per day. When it comes to these calls, I keep picking up my pen for whatever reason. Yeah, it's a volume game, and if someone is not interested then and there at that point, this is where the whole follow-up comes into play. Not only the follow-up at the beginning, meaning that it takes anywhere between 6 to 8, I mean, even more than that, just to get in touch with someone, the decision maker of the property, to then give them the pitch that you're interested in submitting an offer and buying it. So it takes that, and then a lot of times these people are not interested whatsoever in selling the property, so you have to convert them from not being interested to them being interested. So the 80 unit that was bought in February of this year, it took a month of, I would say, me following up on a, I would say, 2-day interval to get in touch with the owner of the property. I would say it was about a 2 to 3 day interval of constantly following up. Took a month just to get in touch. And then from there, they were not interested whatsoever in selling. So it took an additional 4 months of following up. And for the follow-up, it's about being creative, meaning I was doing personal visits to the property, actually meeting with the owner's son, bringing him coffee, talking about the property. The son was the influencer on, it came down to him influencing his dad, which was the owner of the property, to then sell it. So really was able to leverage that, because the son was thrown into the fire to manage the property, which he did not want anything to do with. So that was a good thing. I was able to really hone in and solve that problem by getting the headache off of them. And there's other things that you can use to follow up. There is direct mail. One thing that I love to tell people is sending a Rubik's Cube to an owner, especially if they've expressed no interest in selling, or maybe you've submitted an offer and you are completely off, or they just fell into the twilight zone and will not return any of your calls. Send a Rubik's Cube with a small note that says, hey, looking to figure this out. Another one is send like a small little shoe that says, hey, looking to get my foot in the door. I'm just dropping plenty of things. I'm just dropping some things that you can use. And then one thing I recently heard is like a little Tylenol that you can send to someone and say, hey, let me get this headache off your hands. Just being creative. And the reason why to be creative is you want to avoid just pounding the phone and saying, now are you interested in selling? Now you're interested in selling. You'll get completely blown out of it, and the person will not only get mad, but could block you. That does happen. I have not had that happen to me personally, because I've always just found a way to be creative using those different mechanisms. So text. I will be at a owner's property, and I will just pull up my phone and I'll say, hey John, I keep using John for whatever reason. Hey John, love the way you're taking care of the property. Just here, looking forward to further collaborating with you and seeing about coming together on some terms. Boom, send it over. As simple as that. There's no, I would say, perfect thing to really say. It's just about staying top of mind. Most of the time you will not get a return response. But from that is, once they do shift from being interested, then you're the first that comes to mind because you've been consistently following up and being there. And then one thing is, when you use these different channels to get in touch with someone, maybe they may not communicate or answer cold calls or calls from numbers they don't know. Or if you shoot a text, I shoot text to people, or going through LinkedIn, using social media. I mean, there's just so many ways. Is when you get committed, you get creative. You just figure it out. I've even gone through myself personally, relatives. And just a prime example is there was an owner I was having difficulty getting in touch with. So I did some further research, got in touch with the daughter on Facebook, and slid into the DM, is what people like to say, the direct message, and just mentioned, hey, I'm looking to get in touch with your dad to regarding his property that he has here in Indianapolis. Guess what? She gave me his direct cell phone number. And so that's just a prime example of just being creative. He wasn't interested in selling, but was able to finally get him on the phone after months of not being able to get in touch. But the key here is the follow-up, and that has been the game changer for myself. And all the deals that have been acquired, I would say, have all had the follow-up. Sometimes you may get someone that is ready to go then and there and motivated, but I would say that can be an anomaly, especially in today's climate when you're interrupting someone. So there's different mechanisms to get in touch with someone. There's inbound, you put some content out there. Let's say it's a blog, someone reads it, they come to you. And there's the other approach, which is doing the outbound, interrupting someone, and then seeing how you can solve their problem, or in this case, seeing if they would consider on selling, which for us, a lot of the time, it's all about timing is just what it comes down to, is from this experience. So those are the steps to what to do in 90 days to buy your first multifamily property. I'll go ahead and breeze through them, backtrack, start educating yourself on multifamily itself, give yourself a deadline, month to a month and a half, and then from there, once you've done all that necessary due diligence, just to jump in head first or feet first, whichever you prefer. Second is to pick your neighborhood and market, and do your research on the market too. You want to look for those key economics, just to make sure that let's say you're investing in a neighborhood that is heavily reliant on one manufacturing company and it's completely rural. That let's say that manufacturing company goes down, then you've just lost majority of your renter base. So there's that side. And then from when you're doing your research, the third is taking the driving for dollars approach, or using listsource.com to pull leads, because what it comes down to is the more contacts equals the more contracts. It's all about building that top of the pipeline to ultimately be able to filter to deals that work. Because if you have a minimal pipeline, one deal falls through, or you're really pushing to get that one deal because you don't have anything else. But let's say one deal falls through, you could be a little bit, I would say, even relieved that, oh gosh, now I can go to I've got all these other ones that I'm working through. Of course, you still want to follow up on that one, but that's just a prime example of why you want to build a big pipeline of deals. And for myself, have expanded to multiple markets. So in Indianapolis, Indiana, sub-markets within surrounding Indianapolis, Indiana, Lexington, Louisville, Kentucky, Cincinnati, Dayton, Columbus, Ohio, and some markets within within Missouri as well. So that is just allowed us to be able to build more deals on the top of the funnel, you can say, to narrow down ones that meet the criteria. So from there, then you skip trace using databases, meaning bbb.org, open corporates, and all this can be done very cheaply by outsourcing to what I call just a standard researcher. Very affordable to do that, because from my experience, I was doing all that myself, and it's very low value. Very, very low value to do the researching, and it's very time consuming as well. So if you can get someone in there, what I do is I always do a video of me doing it, documenting it, and then I will delegate. That's how I've always done it. There's different ways to document. I always do the video format and then just push it off to someone. And then once you skip trace, then call. There's always good, I would say, scripts. Reach out to me. I will provide my script to, I would say, the first, I would say, subscribe to this podcast and then leave a 5-star rating. And then from there, shameless plug, I will send you the script that I personally use, and also a audio of some role playing that I do with our acquisitions personnel too. And then last but not least, well, you call, close, but if you don't close, then that's when the whole follow-up comes into play. So that is it in the 90 days. And once you get that property under contract, Of course, you got to do all your due diligence, and that's a whole nother segment in itself. Don't want to compact too much information, but the thing right now, which many people are having difficulties, is finding deals. So if you can find the deals, the rest will come later. You just have to put those pieces of the puzzle together. And then, in this climate, when it comes to raising money, that wouldn't be the issue. You have a good deal, you start promoting it, or I would say at the same time, if you're looking to bring on partners, while you're doing this whole process, is you want to start the networking with people who are going to be your equity partners, or find someone who can partner with you and bring the equity and bring the cash. So there's different ways to go about it. You can raise your own money. You can have someone come in and raise your money. And that could be an experienced partner if you don't have the track record yourself. So there's plenty of ways to go about it with just determining what your strengths are and what weaknesses, and then plugging someone in there. That's always worked for me personally. So I do want to thank everyone for being on this episode. Do hope it provides you value. I'll see you on the next one. Have a great one. Be great. Thanks for listening to the Real Estate Experience. If this has brought you any value, please subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to me. Now go out there and crush it.